Security to Suite 47. We have a possible theft situation. The radio call came at 1:23 a.m. on a Monday morning in February 2026, 3.5 hours into the post-Super Bowl cleanup at Lumen Field in Seattle. James Carter stood frozen in the luxury suite, the Super Bowl ring heavy in his palm, as Connor Hayes and 2 security guards burst through the door. "Don't move," the younger guard barked, hand on his radio. Connor's face was a mixture of vindication and barely contained rage. "I knew it. I saw him put something in his pocket an hour ago. I knew this old guy was sketchy." James Jimmy, to anyone who'd known him in his playing days, was 58 years old, gray hair, weathered face. Wore the burgundy Lumen Field janitorial uniform that hung loose on a frame that had once been 240 pounds of muscle and was now a gaunt 195. "Sir, put the ring down on the counter," the older security guard said, his voice firm but not unkind. Slowly, Jimmy set the ring down on the granite countertop of Suite 47's private bar. His hands were shaking not from fear of being caught, but from the emotion of holding something he'd thought was lost forever, because that ring was his. He earned it 25 years ago, on January 28, 2001, when the Baltimore Ravens destroyed the New York Giants 34-7 in Super Bowl XXXV. He'd played every defensive snap that night, made 6 tackles, knocked down a pass, been part of one of the greatest defenses in NFL history, and now finding it here in this stadium, where he now worked as a janitor, 17 years after he thought he'd lost it, should have been a moment of joy. Instead, he was being accused of theft. "I didn't steal it," Jimmy said quietly. "Right." Connor's voice dripped with sarcasm. He was 27, operations manager for Lumen Field, and had been waiting for an excuse to get rid of the slow old janitor who'd been assigned to his crew tonight. "You just found a Super Bowl ring lying around in a luxury suite." "Sure, I did. It was under the mini-fridge." "Save it for the police." Connor was already on his phone. "Yeah, Seattle PD, we need an officer at Lumen Field, Gate C entrance. We caught a janitor trying to steal a Super Bowl ring from one of our luxury suites. No, I don't know whose it is. Probably belongs to one of the suite holders. We're holding him until you arrive." The younger security guard, couldn't be more than 25, picked up the ring with a gloved hand, examining it under his flashlight. "Says here on the inside, Super Bowl XXXV. That was." He pulled out his phone, Googled it, 2001. "Baltimore Ravens beat the New York Giants." Connor frowned. "Ravens? What's a Ravens Super Bowl ring doing in a Seahawks stadium?" "Suite holders come from all over," the younger guard said. "Could have been dropped by anyone during the game tonight." "Or stolen from a private collection," Connor added, giving Jimmy a dark look. "Either way, this guy's going down for it." The older security guard, maybe 55, gray hair, the kind of face that suggested he'd worked stadium security for decades and had seen everything, was staring at Jimmy. "Really staring. Sir," he said slowly, "what's your full name?" "James Carter," Jimmy said. The older guard's eyes widened. He looked down at the ring, then back at Jimmy, then at the ring again. "James E. Carter," he read from the engraving inside the band. His voice had changed. Gone was the professional security tone. Now there was something else. Recognition. Maybe awe. "Jimmy Carter," he said, barely above a whisper. "Jimmy Carter, number 54, linebacker, Baltimore Ravens, 1996 to 2007. Connor's smug expression faltered. "What are you talking about?" The older guard picked up the ring, held it toward Connor. "This is his ring, because he won the Super Bowl. This man right here, the old janitor you've been pushing around all night, is a Super Bowl champion. 2-time Pro Bowl linebacker. Played 12 years in the NFL. The suite went silent except for the hum of the mini-fridge. Connor's mouth opened, closed, opened again. That's not possible. He's a janitor." "Now he's a janitor," the older guard corrected. "Then he was one of the best defensive players in football." He turned to Jimmy, and there was something close to reverence in his eyes. "Sir, I watched you play. I was at the game in 2001 when you guys demolished the Broncos in the playoffs. You were incredible. What are you doing working as a janitor?" Jimmy didn't answer. Just looked at the ring sitting on the counter under the harsh LED lights of the luxury suite. What was he doing here? That was a long, painful story. James Jimmy Carter had been drafted by the Baltimore Ravens in the 3rd round of the 1996 NFL Draft. University of Miami. Undersized for a linebacker at 6'WN, but fast, smart, and hit like a freight train. He'd played 12 years, made the Pro Bowl twice. Started on the legendary 2000 Ravens defense. The defense that gave up only 165 points all season. The defense that carried them to a Super Bowl championship. The defense that people still talked about as maybe the greatest unit in NFL history. He'd made good money. Not quarterback money, but solid. Saved most of it, invested in real estate, and then everything fell apart. The divorce in 2009 took half his assets. The 2008 housing crash destroyed his real estate investments. A financial advisor, someone he trusted, someone from his hometown, embezzled the rest. By 2012, Jimmy was broke. The CTE symptoms started around the same time. Memory problems, mood swings. Depression so deep some days he couldn't get out of bed. Football had given him everything, and taken everything. He'd tried coaching, couldn't handle the pressure, the noise, the complexity. Tried sports media, couldn't remember statistics, fumbled interviews. His brain just didn't work the way it used to, so he drifted. Odd jobs, construction, security. Anything that didn't require the sharp mind he'd lost to 1,000 helmet-to-helmet collisions. When his daughter in Seattle, his only kid, the one good thing from his marriage, told him about a janitorial opening at Lumen Field, he'd taken it. Steady work. Union benefits. Health insurance that covered the neurologist appointments he needed. It was honest work, humble work. And most days, that was enough. But tonight, holding his Super Bowl ring for the first time in 17 years, all he felt was shame. Connor was on Google now, phone in hand, frantically searching. James Carter, Ravens linebacker. His face went pale as results flooded in. Photos of a younger Jimmy, powerful, dominant, in the purple and black of the Ravens. Stats, highlights, articles calling him one of the most underrated defenders of his generation. "Oh my God," Connor whispered. You actually. The younger security guard was reading over Connor's shoulder. Holy shit, he started in a Super Bowl. He made the Pro Bowl, twice. He looked at Jimmy with new eyes. "Sir, why didn't you say something? Would it have mattered?" Jimmy asked quietly. The question hung in the air. Connor's face burned red. Over the past 4 hours, he'd called Jimmy slow, useless, dead weight. Had publicly humiliated him. Had assigned him to easier tasks like he was incompetent. Had just tried to have him arrested. Connor couldn't finish the sentence. The older security guard handed the ring back to Jimmy. "I'm guessing this went missing years ago, and you've been looking for it?" "I thought I lost it at a charity event in 2009, Jimmy said, turning the ring over in his hands. "Right after my divorce. Everything was chaos. I was selling memorabilia just to pay bills, must have dropped it somewhere. And it ended up here. Someone must have found it, sold it. Collector probably bought it, brought it to the game tonight as a conversation piece." Jimmy's voice was distant, like he was reading someone else's story. "Dropped it again, and I found it. Full circle." Connor found his voice. "Mr. Carter, I need to apologize. I had no idea. How could you?" Jimmy met his eyes. "I'm a janitor." "That's what you see. That's what I am now." "But you're a Super Bowl champion," the younger guard said, like that should change everything. "I was," Jimmy corrected gently. "That was 25 years ago. Now I clean stadiums. Both things can be true." "Let me ask you something. Have you ever looked at someone doing a humble job and assumed that's all they'd ever been? Have you judged someone's entire life by their current position? Keep that feeling. Because what happened next in Suite 47 taught everyone in that room a lesson about respect, dignity, and what it really means to be a champion." Connor's radio crackled. "Connor, you copy? Seattle PD is at Gate C asking about the theft situation." Connor grabbed his radio, but before he could respond, the older security guard took it from his hand. "This is Security Chief Ramirez. Cancel that police call. False alarm. No theft occurred." "Repeat, no theft. We're clear. Copy that." Ramirez handed the radio back to Connor. "You were about to have a Super Bowl champion arrested for recovering his own property. Think about how that would have played out." Connor looked sick. "Mr. Carter," Ramirez said, "that ring is yours. You're free to go." "And?" He glanced at Connor. "I think we owe you more than an apology." "It's okay," Jimmy said. He slipped the ring into his pocket, the weight of it familiar and strange at the same time. "I should get back to work. Still got suites to clean." "Wait," Connor said. You're not going to report this? Report me?" Jimmy looked at him for a long moment. This young man who'd humiliated him, doubted him, tried to have him arrested, and all Jimmy felt was tired. "For what? You didn't know." "How could you? I'm just a janitor." "You're not just anything," Ramirez said firmly. "You're a Super Bowl champion working a job. There's a difference." Jimmy smiled slightly. "Is there?" He walked toward the door, pushing his cleaning cart. Connor stood there, paralyzed by shame and confusion. Everything he thought he knew had just been turned upside down. "Mr. Carter," Connor called out. Can I ask you something?" Jimmy stopped. "Why?" Connor's voice cracked. "Why are you working as a janitor? You won a Super Bowl. You were famous. You made millions. Why are you here?" Jimmy was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft but steady. Because fame doesn't last, money doesn't last, your body doesn't last, and at the end of the day, you still need purpose, still need to work, still need to serve something bigger than yourself. He gestured around the suite. This stadium, it's just a building, but it's where people come together, where they celebrate, where they make memories, keeping it clean, making sure it's ready for the next game, the next fan, the next moment that matters. It's service, just a different kind than I used to do. But you were a champion, Connor protested. I still am, Jimmy said quietly, just not the kind you recognize. He pushed his cart out of the suite. By 3 a.m., everyone on the cleanup crew knew. The slow old janitor they'd been working alongside. Super Bowl champion, Pro Bowler, NFL legend. Some of them Googled him. Found highlight reels. Jimmy Carter demolishing running backs, flying through gaps in the offensive line, celebrating interceptions. Young, powerful, unstoppable, and now, slowly pushing a cart through stadium corridors, picking up trash. The cognitive dissonance was staggering. At 4:17 a.m., Jimmy was cleaning section 214 when Ramirez found him. Mr. Carter, can we talk? Jimmy looked up from wiping down armrests. If you're here to apologize again. Not me. Someone else. Ramirez gestured behind him. A man stepped forward. Late 60s. Expensive suit despite the late hour. Something about his bearing suggested authority. Mr. Carter, I'm David Chen. I'm the stadium general manager. Chief Ramirez filled me in on what happened tonight. It was a misunderstanding, Jimmy said. Everything's fine. It's not fine, Chen said. You were falsely accused by one of my operations managers. You were treated disrespectfully all night. That's not fine. That's not how we operate. Connor didn't know, Jimmy said. No harm done. Except there was harm, Chen insisted. We pride ourselves on respecting every employee here. And we failed you tonight. I want to make it right. I have a job, Jimmy said. That's all I need. What if I offered you a better one? Jimmy paused. We have an opening in stadium tours, Chen continued. Daytime hours. You'd be giving tours to fans, school groups, corporate events. Talking about the history of the stadium, the teams that played here, the games, the moments. You'd be perfect for it. You lived that history. Jimmy considered it, talking to people, sharing stories, being visible instead of invisible. Part of him wanted it. The part that missed being seen, being known, being somebody. But another part, the part that had learned hard lessons about ego and pride, hesitated. Can I think about it? Jimmy asked. Of course, Chen said. Take your time. The offer stands. At 6:48 a.m., the cleanup was finished. 70,000 seats, cleaned and ready for the next event. Jimmy clocked out, exhausted. His back ached. His knees screamed. Every step to the employee parking lot was a reminder of what 12 years of NFL collisions had cost him. But he'd done the work. Finished his shift. Earned his pay. In his pocket, the Super Bowl ring felt like it weighed 10 pounds. Connor was waiting by Jimmy's car. He looked like he hadn't slept, which he probably hadn't. Mr. Carter, I needed to see you before you left. Connor, it's okay. It's not okay. Connor's voice broke. I treated you like garbage all night. I called you slow, dead weight. I tried to have you arrested. And the whole time you were, he gestured helplessly. You were a champion. You were somebody. And I didn't see it. Jimmy leaned against his car, a 2003 Honda Civic with 180,000 miles on it. Connor, you're young. You're ambitious. You want to succeed. I understand that. But let me tell you something I learned the hard way. He pulled out the Super Bowl ring, held it up so it caught the early morning light. This ring, it says I was a champion for one game, on one day 25 years ago. And people see this ring and think it defines me. But it doesn't. You know what defines me? What I do every single day, how I treat people. Whether I show up and do good work, even when it's hard, even when nobody's watching, even when nobody knows who I used to be. Connor wiped his eyes. You judged me by what you saw, Jimmy continued. A slow old janitor. And you know what? That's exactly what I am. But that's not all I am. And that's the lesson. You never know who you're talking to, who they were, what they've overcome, what they're still capable of. He put the ring back in his pocket. I'm keeping this ring, but not to prove I was somebody. To remind me that I still am. Even when the job is humble. Even when nobody knows. Especially then. Connor nodded, unable to speak. Jimmy got in his car, started the engine. Drove away as the sun rose over Seattle. Behind him, Connor stood in the empty parking lot and made two decisions. First, he would never judge an employee by their speed again. Second, he would apologize to every person he ever dismissed without knowing their story. 3 weeks later, Jimmy Carter accepted the stadium tour guide position, not because he needed validation. Not because he wanted to relive his glory days, but because he realized that his story, the rise, the fall, the humbling, the service, could teach people something valuable. Now, when he gives tours of Lumen Field, he shows groups the luxury suites, the field, the locker rooms, and when they ask about his background, he tells them the truth. I used to play professional football, won a Super Bowl, made some money, lost all of it, ended up working here as a janitor. And you know what? Both jobs had dignity, both mattered. Because it's not about the job you do, it's about doing it with pride. The Super Bowl ring sits in a display case in his small apartment. He doesn't wear it. Doesn't need to. Because Jimmy Carter learned something that not every champion learns. Your worth isn't in what you've accomplished. It's in who you are when nobody's applauding. And Connor Hayes? He's still operations manager. But now, before every big event, he gathers his crew and tells them Jimmy's story. Never judge someone by how fast they clean. You have no idea what they've cleaned up before they got here. And every person on his crew knows. Treat everyone with respect, because you never know when you're standing next to a champion. Jimmy Carter's story reminds us that Super Bowl rings don't define champions' character does. That the janitor might be a hero. That the slow worker might have accomplished more than you ever will. That everyone deserves dignity, regardless of their current job. If this story moved you, this video, share with NFL fans, Seahawks fans, or anyone who works a humble job. Subscribe for more stories of hidden champions. Comment. Have you ever discovered someone's incredible background after judging them? Remember, Super Bowl rings can be lost, found, stolen, sold, but the character that earned them, that's forever. Never judge someone by their current job. You have no idea what championship they've already won. See you in the next story.